The camera's right there.
Okay.
So you'll be talking to the camera.
Oh, okay. All right.
And don't need to hear that. Let's see. We will pop out the chat. And then basically, since I just clicked start stream, that sends out the notification that, hey, they're streaming right now.
Okay.
If you want to join them. I've already made the announcements on social media.
All right.
So we should see some people coming in
Okay.
soonish. But even if they don't, we can
Oh,
go
sure.
ahead and get started. So, welcome, Dave.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Round 2.
Yes. For those of you that don't know, because we haven't released it yet.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, we have interviewed Dave for a wonderful podcast that we'll be releasing soon about Iowa's activities during World War II, as soon as it stops giving Sean mounds and mounds of grief in editing. So hopefully that is soon.
Right.
Sean, we are rooting for you. But until then,
Sure.
we get to talk to you now.
Oh boy.
And this is
Too much fun.
This is exciting, yeah. We usually do this on Saturdays, so the fact that we can do this now is pretty awesome.
Sure.
So,
Right.
we have the Iowa.
Okay, there we go. Is that a 32-1B camouflage? Looks like it.
Looks like it, yeah.
Close to it.
And
Painted wooden decks, yes. Dark
wooden
blue.
decks.
Right. Yeah,
They-
that's pretty
they-
accurate.
They don't have the 20s though.
No, that's true.
On the turret, and
Right,
also
right.
also for some reason they give us double 20s.
Oh.
Um,
The twin 20s.
Yeah, the twin.
Yeah, they
Twin-
actually. I just had that question surface the other day.
Mm-hmm.
They were supposed to be, all 4 of the Iowas were going to receive up to 8 of the twin 20 millimeters.
Okay.
But the best we've been able to ascertain, as well as a comment from Robert Summerall's book on Iowa class battleships, is they were never actually placed on board any of the Iowas. In fact, they were pulling off most all the 20s because they were pretty much obsolete at the end of World War II. And to kind of concur that even further, I've never even found a photograph of any of the Iowas with one of the twin 20 millimeters. And I'd forgotten there was actually a 3-barrel and a quad version as well.
Really?
Right. Yeah. And I didn't realize that. It was on. Yeah.
That's quite the thing to think about.
Right. It was on NavSource that I picked up some of that stuff. So I never stopped researching it. It's which is. Yeah, I actually enjoy. So
You never stop researching. Period. We have to tear you out of your
I know that's
out of your cave. He's like a groundhog. Every so often he just surfaces.
Right. Yeah. I do enjoy going out on deck. I was just mentioning and speaking to everybody every once in a while. So I try to do that, like just start up a conversation with a guest and.
Very nice.
Sometimes you have a live wire. Other times you have somebody that. Is too busy taking it all in, perhaps. Oh. Yeah.
Hopefully, as more people start to filter in, we'll have some live wires here because you are a very wonderful guest for us. You're really the only guest of the upper management we've had thus far.
Okay.
Aside from Craig, so.
Yeah. No,
thank you for breaking the ice.
Yeah. No, I really enjoy sharing our experiences we've had on board Iowa now, approaching 6.5 years.
Wow.
And all the little goodies that I've been able to, pick up historically and technically, and the bizarre thing is you just never stop picking up and learning things. We're just constantly amazed at all the different topics there are to research and little tidbits, and I'd love to go back to the National Archives at College Park, Maryland one of these days, and I research even more, but we don't have the funding to do that at the moment.
Someday.
Yeah, I need a corporate sponsor for that, maybe.
So for any of you guys listening,
here we go. Yeah.
So let's head on back to the very beginning.
Sure.
How did you get started?
Okay.
With this?
Yes, yeah. And there is a little bit of a story there too. Well, let me go back just a little bit that might explain some of the groundwork or floor work of this whole topic.
Yeah, tell us, by all means.
The Iowas, the 4 of them, I think I knew about them all the way back when we were little kids watching Victory at Sea. And they were almost like your brother or sister when it comes to naval warfare and history and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I always was aware of them. And then I was a member, well, I still am, of the Navy League and the Naval Institute, was always buying books, the model kits, of course, and things like that. So, they were always kind of part of your life. And I was working on the Queen Mary as well during high school and college. And they announced that New Jersey was going to be coming out.
Really?
To go back into service. And it just so happens the public affairs officer, the PAO, like the public relations person that they chose to be placed on there, I had associated or interfaced with at the Long Beach Naval Base.
Nice.
So I was like totally thrilled. So that kind of opened up this really neat dialogue that started with the initial commissioning crew, including the captain and the executive officer that's I'm still a good friend with today.
Good.
And so I was visiting the ship, and then I would take him over in the Queen Mary, and we would go out to different functions, and I was in the middle of that whole little scenario. So that was a great thrill, and have this big, huge scrapbook at home.
Nice.
And New Jersey was really special to me, and because I forgot to mention too as well, but when she came out for the Vietnam War, which at that point in time was the only active battleship, in the world.
Right.
I think the only time my parents pulled me out of school because they knew how important it was going to be for me, and we saw her come in to Long Beach for the very first time before she deployed off to Vietnam. Right, and I was just like dumbfounded. I was like, wow, it's not a picture, it's like a real battleship, and that was so cool. Amen. So I had this great association or feeling towards the New Jersey, and that led to me actually being able to travel with her from Long Beach to San Diego. I got to ride her for one day, which was, and I ran all over the ship. I was just in total heaven.
And how old were you at this
time? So let me think. I was out of college, probably about 27, 26, 27.
Because when you say run over, I was imagining like this little kid of the kind that I just had to deal with.
I was a little older. And then we watched her, of course, deploy off to, Beirut, Lebanon. Excuse me. And all the way through, I was there during decommissioning day.
All right.
So a few years after that took place, by that time I started an aerospace career. But anyhow, I noticed there was this group, it was at that point in time called the Iowa Class Preservation Association.
All right.
And they had a goal that was kind of, large, but that was to save or make sure that all 4 ships were saved.
Nice.
But I just so had my heart into making sure that some of them were saved as museum memorial ships, which I loved visiting. I'd been aboard a few of them over the years. And so I worked with them for about a year, and then I pulled out because it was just too much. My 2 boys were younger, and I was just getting overwhelmed. It was just getting too exhausting.
Yeah.
But the president at that point in time, he was the person that started our current nonprofit group, the Pacific Battleship Center.
All right.
And just about the time I had to make a decision about either taking a retirement and a layoff from my aerospace company versus transferring with them, I decided to kind of roll the dice and go after this dream of working on a battleship. And at that point in time, I was the tour director or manager, so to speak. And I was kind of setting up the tours, doing the research and things like that. So that's how it started. I walked out the door from aerospace, flew up to San Francisco, and then for 9 months we lived on board the Iowa. And you've heard all our Port Richmond. When
you were up in Susan Bay.
Yes,
well, I've heard it, but our guests may not have. So
right.
Why don't you go ahead?
Let me back up a little bit. So the main reason this even took off, that we did receive the ship from the United States Navy with a contract as the caretaker of Iowa, so to speak, is through a $3 million grant from the state of Iowa. And the game plan was to only be up at the Port of Richmond, where we had towed her out of Benicia at the reserve fleet for only about 3 months. But they had a couple of bureaucratic hiccups in the state of Iowa.
Oh.
So we couldn't get the funds. So what we did was on the weekends and Saturday and Sundays, we would open up the ship. They could only go on the main deck for $10. And then we had like a little museum off to the side in the warehouse that I created with some exhibits with the help of various people. And then we had a gift shop too. So we were wearing all kinds of hats. Like our president, he was buying merchandise.
Right.
And, he's a jack of all trades anyhow. So we were there. It wound up being 9 months because it took us a long time before we had the funds. The main reason we were there was to have the ship painted.
Ah.
But then also on the
not quite as fancy as this.
No, we didn't go that route. Yeah, we do have some really incredible paint that's supposed to last about 15 years.
Ooh.
On board the ship.
Very nice.
Yeah. So anyhow, we did.
Wargaming. Why is it rusty?
Oh,
why is it rusty? Come on, Wargaming.
I think that would be typical. In fact, a lot of the paint in the South Pacific would shock. And they didn't have enough time. They were always on the go normally.
Okay.
So they weren't repainting a lot. So actually, that's a little bit, in my book, more realistic from what I know.
All right. So you're off the hook this time, Wargaming.
No, I think that looks pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyhow, we were up in the Port of Richmond, San Francisco Bay area, so we'd be open on the weekends, and we had these incredible volunteers.
Nice.
That showed up, just kind of like today, and they did just massive amount of work. You just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But I trained some tour folks who'd be on the bow, so we would have people come up, and it was an incredible. I really hadn't experienced. I really hadn't been up there before in that area, and the weather was a little bit different, So we
slightly different from LA.
Right. So it was almost like camping out because we only had a little portable generator, really for a little bit of lighting, and then also for our computers.
Okay.
So it was quite cold in December, January, February time frame, and we nicknamed the ship the Armored Icebox. We have jackets to say that and have the date on there, the people that were up there. But it was freezing cold because the ship just, none of the lighting was on. So even what am I thinking of? The guys that are always humming. The electrical...
The electrical people.
Yeah, well, just electrics that generate... that generate, a little bit of heat. Those weren't on. And the ship was pitch black, so we'd go exploring around night. And it's really bizarre because it looks totally different when you just have a little flashlight going on than when it's all lit up. But when it goes dark, it's pitch black dark, believe me. Yeah. And then the other nickname we came up with was the Armored Stairmaster because... Normally, when you give people, tours, their legs are normally aching the next day because everything's up and down and
up and down and all around.
Right, exactly. So anyhow, we finally did get towed down here just in the nick of time because we'd made a commitment to the Iowa Veterans Association to be ready to have host them on the reunion, and we opened up the ship the day before to the public. And that was July 7th, in 2012. And I remember the night before we were open to the public, Craig Post and I, our current tour manager, we were walking around the ship at 1 o'clock in the morning, putting up the graphic signs that we had developed.
Right.
It was that close to opening day.
Oof.
And then we had pretty much trained a lot of people. So it was down to the last wire, down to the last minute.
Talk about cutting it close.
Right, yeah. So that's kind of when the adventure continued. And then I guess a few weeks after that or whatever, Jonathan walked up and he goes, "Hey, we found our curator." And I'm like, "Really? Who's that?" And he goes, "Oh, it's you. You're the one that's doing all the research all the time." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So
talk about being put on the spot there.
Right. And I was kind of dumbfounded at first, and then I really warmed up to the idea. I was like, "Wow, yeah, that would be terrific," because it really tied into so many things I've done over my lifespan, and kind of a fruition of visits to warships, interfacing with. I was on commissioning committees for a couple of occasions with the real Navy, as I call it, and so the rest I picked up. It's all out there on the internet these days. How to take care of things, how to accession things, and with the help of some really great volunteers here as well.
Excellent.
We've done a lot of terrific things, and then I started doing a lot of research after that because there was a lot of historical pieces that nobody had really documented about the Iowa. And that blew my mind.
Wow.
But I was really happy and excited to donate or contribute towards the history of the ship.
Nice.
And there's a book that picked up on some of that with David Doyle. He just put out a book on the Iowa that is a really good buy for $20. And I gave him all my information and also all the photographs that had never been really shown or shared before.
Very nice.
I was super excited about that. There's also a French warship author I became friends with. And it's in French, but there's a 2-volume series he put out about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And he told me nobody in France had ever put out a book on the Iowa-class battleships. And I was like, wow.
How about that?
Right. So I got the right to forward to that.
Nice.
And so they got a page in English and then a page in French. You know? But I was real happy, tickled pink that I got to do that. And also on Dave Doyle's book, I got the right to forward to it. So I was tickled pink about that. But anyhow, the French book, one of our friends, who's the author of the HMS Hood book, Bruce Taylor, is starting, I believe, very soon to translate this French book for the United States Naval Institute into English, and he wants me to take a look at it. But we're hoping that this author, Philip Caris, if I pronounce that correctly,
if not, sorry.
Who's written several other books on the French warships, and I think also German too, and has an incredible photo collection.
Nice.
But anyhow, I keep getting sidetracked here. Sorry, everybody.
This is completely normal, Dave. By the way, folks.
Right.
Just for the record. Yeah.
But anyhow, it looks like that possibly could be translated into English. And Philip did a wonderful job on collecting photographs and graphics. It's a really, just to look at it, even without understanding, French or being able to read French, it's just a really beautiful book.
Very good.
He did a really tasty job, so to speak. It's very avant-garde. How about that?
That's
right. So
haven't quite heard it put it like that before, but I'll take it.
Right.
So one of the other things that we brag about, we always love it when we get guests for our podcast because it distracts from our incredibly horrible gameplay. So Denny and I play World of Warships as kind of one of the draws, and
I see. Okay.
How good we do varies widely. So I'm very glad that I was able to get you because hopefully
now you can focus on playing the game.
On you.
Oh, on me. Okay.
No. Now the public can focus on you and learn interesting things rather than watch me die horribly repeatedly.
She's not going down, is she?
Yeah. If God wills it.
Oh no. Okay.
During the 75th, I did have the unfortunate time of having a very rough string of games with the Missouri with Battleship Larry as a guest, and he still has yet to forgive me.
Oh, great.
For
how to make friends, et cetera, et cetera.
Indeed. So anyway.
Right.
So
we're focusing on the third deck expansion now. So I've been doing a lot of research, mainly around the different either ocean liners or warships that Bob Ballard had dove on at one point in time.
So obviously we know about, or by we I mean Danny and I know about the third deck exhibit, but we haven't really had a chance to tell the public about it. So
sure.
If you want, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is going to be our biggest expansion or addition to the tour route. I think Mike Gesher, our vice president, told us that it's going to open up about 11,000 square feet of additional tour space. So besides, first of all, it's going to add the enlisted barbershop, the brig, which is the jail, of course, and then the laundry, what used to be the cobbler and tailor shop areas, and then on the opposite starboard side is where the print room was as well.
Very nice.
Yeah, so those are going to be added just as part of the existing ship's compartments. But what they've done is the forward 3 berthing compartments, they've taken out a lot of the center, most all the berthing racks. And one of our philosophies is we'll never go into a compartment on the Iowa that's unique and substitute it for something else, because we feel like we should keep as much as the ship authentic as we possibly can.
Of course.
And there's the one thing there's a multitude of on board Iowa is berthing compartments, and so this opened up some additional museum expansion areas.
Mm-hmm.
So we've teamed up with Bob Ballard, who's just up the road here in the harbor department, and we're not quite sure what he's going to be. That doesn't look good. He's going to be placing in for the exhibits, but we're going to try to do some history or exhibits or presentations about the different shipwrecks he's dove on. There's going to be a virtual reality section that they're working on that people can plug into, and I don't have too many details on that at the moment. And then there's going to be a section where we're going to have a screen videos streaming of Bob Ballard's dives. I can almost say that, get tongue-tied here. And then also during any of his future dives, we'll broadcast that live for people. And so that would be kind of fun. And then another section that's still under development will be a lot of warship memorabilia, photographs, different artifacts that we've picked up off of Iowa, as well as other warships perhaps that are associated with the United States Navy.
Cool.
So it's in work. Most of what we call the demolition has been done. The next phase is going to be putting in the required overhead fire sprinklers and sensors.
Got to keep people safe.
Yeah, right. And this is continuing to evolve, and where we would like to hope and think we'd be open by summertime, we're not quite sure if that's achievable, but we'll see what happens. We're not really willing to call when we might be able to open yet, because there's just a lot of moving pieces at the moment. But in total, that should add probably a good half hour to the tour route.
Wow.
So now we're definitely approaching the regular tour is 2 to 2.5 hours. And then that's outside the full steam ahead tour, which I just heard the other day is doing really well, with additional price to go down to the engine room, boiler room, battery plot rooms, hospital. Does it combat engagement center still? Or?
It okay. Well, last I heard, at least. It's still CEC
that kind of evolves too as well. And I think, the Strike Warfare Center, some people call it, instead of the Combat Engagement Center. It changed names midstream.
Yeah.
It can't be simple. It's got to be complex.
No, of course we can't have simple.
Right.
So
that's the big push for our latest effort.
Very nice.
Yeah. So you always want to have something to market, to push out to the public, to get them to come back in. Yeah. The rule of thumb with attractions is normally every 3 years you're supposed to have something to pull people, to have something to market and things like that. I mean, we're not going to have like a roller coaster going through the smokestacks or anything like that.
That does sound really fun, though.
Well, it could be.
That also sounds really terrifying.
Right.
But
that's not what we're about. Of course.
No.
So I don't think the Navy would go for that either.
I do think they would. Yeah.
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah. But anyhow, there's a lot of background research I've been doing to support all these things, and so that's been interesting. Not just focusing on Iowa, but focusing on other ships as well.
Nice.
Ocean liners.
Ocean liners as well.
Yeah, too. So.
Yeah, I think you're now the third person from the Queen Mary we've had, because we had Chris Butler, and then we had Craig.
Yeah, Chris. Right.
And of course, Chris used to work with you a lot.
Not only on the Queen Mary, but then when we were in Rockwell in the Space Shuttle program. Yeah, so Chris and I go way back. And then, Craig, our tour manager, he was on board Queen Mary for 17 years.
Wow.
And I was on 11, and part of that was part-time.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that was part-time. Sounds great. And that was during high school and college, so it'd be weekends and holidays, and then full-time in the summertime. But once I did graduate, I did go full-time for I think it was about 3 years.
Nice.
Before I started out in aerospace again. Yeah, but even after leaving the Queen Mary, I was still visiting warships on open house. And before the age of terrorism, too, as a member of the Navy League, we were able to put in for cruises out of San Diego.
Nice.
So we'd go out for a day or two, and I've managed to go out in some incredible ships, 7 or 8, 9 cruises some really cruisers and destroyers, and of course I mentioned New Jersey, one battleship. Yeah, and even a carrier. I was out in the Ranger one day too. So
very nice.
Yeah, so I was always kind of like the Walter Mitty of hanging around the Navy, I suppose, or playing Navy, so to speak.
Everything you could get on, you did.
Right. Basically. Yeah, certainly. And then when I'd go overseas, if I was traveling with somebody, I'd drive them nuts because I'd go to all these maritime museums or preserved, commercial ships or warships, whatever it might be, and
nice.
That was a thrill to me because, Royal Navy history is one of my highlights too, as well.
Yeah. Chris told us the story of when he was in England and went aboard HMS Victory, wearing all of his Iowa stuff.
Right.
And they said, "Oh, you're on the Iowa," and he said, "Well, I didn't serve on her." And someone put his arm around Chris's shoulder and says, "It's so." I'm not even going to try and do the accent because I just offend everyone in Europe.
Right.
Chris, of course, can do it very well, but I cannot. He said, "It's okay. I didn't serve aboard HMS Victory when she was in service either."
Right. Well, sometimes I really am a little embarrassed. I never served in the military.
Right.
But I've just, my whole lifetime, I've read about ships, maritime battles, ocean liners, things like that, built the models, visited, gone out, supported them in different ways. Mm-hmm. So when people ask me, "Well, you were in, weren't you?" And I was like, "Well, no, actually I wasn't." It's like I feel kind of sheepish, a little embarrassed,
You're a historian.
Right. Yeah, and that's how I explain it too. Yeah. It's like I just go, "Hey, I'm an amateur naval historian," so to speak.
You say you're an amateur. I think the title of curator comes with a fair amount of professional recognition.
All right, so maybe I can now take out the amateur and just say naval historian.
I think you finally made it into the big leagues.
Okay, it took a while. Yeah, but also just reaching this point, it's great to take a step back and be able to tell people that at least you kind of support the Navy by remembering their history and contributing to it too. Definitely. Which I really enjoyed a lot, to be able to do that.
Definitely.
Yeah. So anyhow, but I keep seeing flashes and bangs and booms, and I have no idea what's going on.
So our first game ended very lovingly, and we will never discuss the first game again. Okay. Let us move on to the second one. Sure. So now we're taking our little sister out, the Missouri.
Oh, she's in Measure 22 camouflage.
She is. She actually has two camouflage patterns. One is the same as Iowa's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
actually, they were both different in World War II, but that's okay.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
One of the kind of quirky things I have down in my compartment office is, and people can go online and buy this, but there was, and I talk to these folks periodically, there was a group that years and years ago went out and did research on the different World War II Navy's camouflage paint colors. And they said they even had somebody go dive on one of the World War II wrecks and went into a paint locker and pulled up the paint to do the research. But to make a real long story short, they've done all this research, and they have a collection of little paint squares, paint chips, you'd almost say.
Very nice.
That I have at home, as well as here. They donated a whole set to the ship. But if you're building a model of either Italian or German or Japanese and American ships, and then you can check out. Today, everything's just pretty much some shade of gray.
Right.
And that's partially because, we no longer do camouflage, because once radar came into being, you really weren't going to hide from anybody with sophisticated radar.
Right.
But it used to be where the visual, locating of your target did make a difference, potentially, if the camouflage could deceive somebody either on the direction of your heading or the size of your guns or what kind of ship you were, things of that nature, then that's what they were trying to achieve. So that's a whole nother topic of camouflage that I started to go into, ship camouflage.
And probably, any little bit that you can do to disguise is all the better.
Sure. Yeah.
So we actually have a question here from one of our viewers. He says, visually, are there any differences between the Iowa-class ships that can be seen in photos aside from camouflage?
Right. Well, definitely in World War II. Now, there's some really quirky differences that you'd have to really know and do some research, like ventilators and things like that. But here's one interesting World War II goodie. So the Iowa was unique with her turret 2. She did not have a quad 40 millimeter on top of her. She only had 320 millimeters, and that was because Iowa's armored conning tower, it extends down to the 03 level for the flag bridge people. So she was called, I think this is correct, she was a force flagship, and the others were like a squadron flagship.
Okay.
So the other 3 Iowas, their 03 level was not armored.
Oh.
So, the bridge has the armored conning tower, the helm was on the 04 level, and then the defense or the air observation, or during World War II, I think it was the warfare officers were up at the 05 level.
All right.
So Iowa was unique. She had armored section for the flag group, and that's also one of the reasons too she was chosen for President Roosevelt to take him over to the Tehran conference, because they had the 2 exterior elevators, and the smaller one from the 02 level would take him up to the 03 level, and in case combat broke out, they were going to put the president inside that armored conning tower.
All right.
And that's one of your most protected areas on the ship, with about 17 inches of armor. So then, anyhow, that's one really obvious spot. And then they might be different. Again, if you were real familiar with the ship, like what she had been outfitted with radars, things of that nature, you could identify, perhaps, like, that was Wisconsin, because she went into an overhaul and repair and was fitted out differently and things like that. So I can easily look at the ships, and at least I can tell Iowa apart from the other 3.
All right.
And they had different camouflage for a while there in World War II. But what's interesting also is in the interiors, there are some quirky differences where the crew, the officers, whoever it was, shipyard even, might have determined a compartment was going to be for a different purpose than the other ones. And then at different points in time, depending on when their last overhaul was, they might have different communication or sensors on board, So that's even today, the different ships, they're always evolving, and it depends, at what point in time you had your upgrades or overhauls, and depends maybe what shipyard you were in, and they might do things a little bit differently than another shipyard that does overhaul and repairs, and so it's it's a challenge sometimes to figure out those different. But I have, ship's plans. They call them general arrangements sometimes for the different decks. And over Iowa's 3 different service commissioning periods, what I'm struggling to say, the designation for the compartments, it changed. And that was because, different missions were coming on board. They had to add, for example, in the 80s, a Pioneer drone operating equipment. So they had to put that up, I think it was on the 02 level, not too far from us. But for a while, they had, of course, when they had the float planes on board, there was a compartment for the aviation crew and the pilots. And then they had a bomb room too that stored the bombs that they could put on the Kingfishers and later on the Seahawks. Well, that went away, of course, in the second commissioning, because then it was just the helicopters on board and you didn't need that. So it's really funny or interesting. You can walk around the ship, and if you look and think things through, she's such a mixture of the World War II Korean era and then the 80s.
Right.
And some things changed and other things stayed the same, just like they were when she was initially built and fitted out. So it's always kind of a quirky thing to kind of figure out. Well, was that there during the first commissioning, or I mean, if that question comes up, it doesn't always come up, But for some of us geeky folks that like to analyze and look at things like that,
I bet.
Yeah. But there was one point in time too, after World War II, before the helicopters really came into play, into the float planes, into that era, was 1949. So at least on Iowa, and I think probably on the sister ships too, the starboard catapult had been pulled off. So for a while, she was only in service the tail end of her first commissioning, with only one catapult on the port side. And so I think then she was down to 2 planes. Maybe there was one on a dolly, or maybe it was just one plane. I'd have to go back and double check that, because they used to have 3 full planes, 2 on the catapults, and then 1 on a dolly. Right. So, but
interesting.
Then the center crane was there too. Yeah. I found that kind of fascinating. When I was staring at a photograph one day, I was like, "Oh look, they popped off the starboard catapult." And that's when they were starting to back off on all the expenditures.
Yeah.
And
especially after the war was over, I bet.
Right. And that's one of my talking points on my Curator's tour I do every second Saturday, is the battleships bring, enormous capabilities, quite a few of them compared to other warships, but they also are very expensive to operate.
Oh, yeah.
And that's usually what would pull them out of service in peacetime. They're kind of hard to justify after you go through a war phase or a war period.
I remember when we were interviewing you for the podcast, you actually had a number amount as to what it cost every day to run an Iowa-class battleship.
Right.
Do you recall that?
Sure. Yeah, there's, I remember, there was a report that came out after the Tour 2 accident in the 80s, but the General Accounting Office, and this is back in 1989 dollars, I believe, said that it was $58 million a year.
Wow.
And that's another one of the talking points too. Today, the Navy's always trying to hopefully reduce the size of the crew, because greater than 50 or 60% of the operating costs of a warship today is going to be your crew's salaries and benefits.
Right.
So it's a balancing act, because if you automate them too much, well, then you lose the human touch, and that can be dangerous, as we've seen with some of the recent, collisions and things like that.
Yeah.
But just to give a comparison, in World War II, the initial design complement of Iowa, this is kind of interesting, was 2,300 people.
Right.
And so at the time, when the air threat became agonizingly real, they threw on so many more 20 millimeters, 40 millimeters than they had planned, and that added 500 people. So she came out in World War II with a crew size of 2,800. In the Korean War, they pulled off a lot of the 20 millimeter guns, so it came down to about 2,400, 2,500. And then even in the 80s, the crew size was still about 1,500.
Wow.
So as a comparison, I always call out the backbone of the fleet today is the Burke-class destroyers. We have about 64, 65 of those in service. Wonderful warships, by the way. But anyhow, their crew size is somewhere around 300, 320. So you can see the difference. Now, some of the other ships, like the amphibious assault ships, they have larger crews. And the most extreme size, of course, is going to be your aircraft carriers and the Nimitz class. You have the crew itself is about 2,500, and then you've got the air wing that comes on board when they deploy, and that's another approximately 2,500. So you have up to 5,000. So one of the challenges for the latest Ford class that we're going to build, at least 4 in total, 3 more after the Ford, was to hopefully reduce the operating crew size, and I think it did come down to, I want to say 2,300, 2,300, something like that. But you can tell, that doesn't look good. You can tell that, that the battleships are just, they even got the sea chests on the bottom of the hull for the water coolant. That's pretty authentic. I'm shocked there. That's good job, guys. And the bull's killed aside.
As we go into the watery depths.
Right. That's something the model kit guys never add on, but you can't see it, so whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
The bad news is that we are sinking into the depths. The good news is that we have completed our mission, so...
Right. We better call Paul Allen so he can do a dive on it.
Can find it again.
Right, yeah, we were real excited. I'm jumping...
Oh, go ahead.
Subjects or topics here as I ramble on.
Oh, no, by all means.
Just the last couple of weeks with Paul Allen, who's discovering World War II wrecks that nobody's ever documented or found before, and the biggest one was the Lexington.
Yes.
Which was incredibly thrilling, and that was always one of my favorite ships, her and her sister ship, the Saratoga.
Yeah.
They were just incredible looking ships. But
I know several people who are, well, one person in particular whose favorite ship is also very much the Lexington class, and Sarah in particular, so he will be very happy to hear that.
Right, yeah. The thing that was interesting is in the debris field, they had several, I'm sure saw the pictures, had several planes fall off, I guess, the flight deck or out of the hangar bay somehow. In the Naval Museum, the Aviation Museum down in Pensacola, they're just thrilled because there's a plane that nobody ever saved or preserved, and that's the Douglas Devastators. They were pretty much obsolete by the time the war started and were pulled out after the Battle of Midway.
Yeah.
They were all shot down, I think. I think almost all of them. But anyhow, they are so deep, I don't know if it's feasible to pull a couple of those up to restore one, which would be so exciting.
Yeah.
But they seem like really great shape, and there's some wonderful pictures of those planes.
Very nice.
And then just almost a week and a half ago or so, they found another one of my, I guess, what ship don't I like, maybe. It's the way I should put this. But anyhow, they found the Juno, which was one of the Atlanta-class, I call it anti-aircraft cruisers. And they're very handsome ships, but lightly armored, and unfortunately they got placed with some very vicious Japanese cruisers with the long lance torpedoes flying left and right. But anyhow,
not as planned.
They found her remains, which was really awesome.
Wow.
And unfortunately, it was pretty horrifying as well to see she really exploded and went off in several different pieces. And that was also the ship where the 5 Sullivan brothers were lost, and what a horrible story that was.
I was about to ask you about that.
To take place, and we have sort of that loose connection with the state of Iowa too, the Sullivan brothers, and
they were from Iowa, yeah.
Right, and we do have a little bit of tribute to them in the museum, and calling out their story.
Very nice.
Next to one of our model cases.
One of the other pictures that I remember seeing down there, I'm not sure if it's still down there, but was of, I believe it was Minneapolis.
Oh.
After she took a torpedo, right? And the bow,
right. Totally blown off.
Totally blown off.
Yeah.
And they strapped logs to the front, didn't they?
I think so. Well, you'd have to beef up the back. You'd have some of the watertight compartments.
Right.
Yeah. And I think I remember reading where they even towed one ship backwards into port to be worked on.
I know one of them, like, they chopped down a bunch of logs to shore up the front, and then just sailed backwards to San Diego or San Francisco or something like that.
It happened to a couple of the ships. But that's one area. It's horrible to say. If you lose that bow section, there's not too much critical in there,
right?
And that could easily be rebuilt. Of course, if your compartment was up there, you might not make that same comment.
No, but it is very cold-blooded of the name to say some parts are more valuable than others.
Right. Yeah.
Actually,
we have what's called the Armored Citadel in Iowa, of course, and the bow is actually there's very little armor there.
Oh yeah.
Or there's not really. It's just basic steel that you would build a ship with. But yeah.
One of the fun harbors that we have is actually a dock, And one of the modes is actually the armor layout, so we can actually bring that up and talk about it.
Oh, okay. Is that another question there that popped up? Or
Yeah.
okay.
They're saying lots of Devastators down there. They said the last count they saw was around 13 Devastators down below.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
Oof.
Ooh, that's super exciting. Jeez. And I would love to get a hold of somebody down there and talk to them and ask them, hey, is that even feasible to take place?
Right.
One of my dreams, and there's no kingfishers left in the world that we're aware of to preserve or save additional ones.
Right.
There's about 5 or 6 around in museums as well as different warships. And I'd like to contact the Navy Aviation Museum too and ask them, is there one that like went into one of the Great Lakes or something like that? Is there one potentially that you could pull up and refurbish?
Right.
But the other one that nobody saved was the Curtiss Seahawk, probably the best and the final float plane that was on Iowa at the tail end of her World War I commissioning period.
This one?
Yes, it is. Yes,
it is.
Yeah, sure enough. Yeah, that's pretty close. Pretty close. Yeah, that's a Curtiss Seahawk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the Vought Kingfishers I believe were a little underpowered, if I remember correctly or read correctly. And I'm not a total aircraft guy. I just remember bits and pieces.
You're a ship guy. We'll let that go. Yeah.
Right. Although you pick up different things, and there's a really great book out on float planes we have in our library, and it's kind of an obscure subject. But until the carriers, took over, they were the eyes of the fleet.
That's true.
And we didn't have satellites and didn't have radar, so they could be the eyes of the fleet at that point in time.
Nice.
Man, these are some incredible graphics. I'm really blown away.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it helps that Danny and Sean were able to put together a computer that can run on the highest graphics.
Oh, okay.
The one that I have at home doesn't look anywhere near as impressive, but yeah, this is
okay.
the ship and its model in game as well as the Citadel. And for balance reasons,
I see. Mm-hmm.
For balance reasons, they moved the Citadel one deck down.
Okay.
But it used to be right there, on deck 2.
Right.
And here's the Citadel right now.
Yeah.
What's actually really funny that a lot of people don't know when they go on the tour route, when they step through the galley into the mess,
right,
they're on the Citadel.
Yes, yeah.
And you could actually see all those gigantic bolts.
And that's one of my talking points on my Curator tour. And here's a quirky thing, and there was an earlier question about differences between the ships. The forward and aft Thard ships armor plate that's protecting the armored Citadel. New Jersey and Iowa's are 11 and a half inches, somewhere around there. But when it came time when they were working on the Missouri and the Wisconsin, and the Washington Navy Treaty had dissolved for the most part, and there was no more restrictions on weight, they increased both the Wisconsin and Missouri's fore and aft plates to 14 and a half inches because they felt like they needed some additional protection. So there's one of those little quirky differences that I stumbled across.
Let's actually see if that's modeled in game, because it has a thwart ship right here, 287 millimeters, and then 216 for the Citadel.
Is it that sophisticated?
And it is mimicked. This is Missouri.
Okay.
And Citadel thwart ship 297 millimeters. So yeah, they did model that.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, the Summerall book has a pretty decent cutaway of the armor structure. And then we have one down in the museum that I also use as one of my talking points.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, originally that was produced by a Russian. And it was in meters, so we had to convert it
all back, yeah.
But we were just cracking up. It's like, oh, that's great. So the guy that has probably the finest cutaway version of the ship's armor is from Russia, right? So we got to chuckle out of that one anyhow.
Yeah, there was a time when I was, when I first started volunteering here, and I was uploading lots of pictures from some of the places that I got to go.
Sure.
And I kept having all these people. It's like, hey man, OPSEC is like. He's retired for over 25 years. There's no OPSEC about these ships left, right?
Right. No, I don't think so.
No, not really.
Yeah, I don't believe so. Hey, I hear metal termites in the background. They're chewing on the ship again.
Yeah. Either that or we're sinking, so
no.
That could be always fun.
Yeah, I got a call yesterday from my mother. Did you feel that earthquake? No, Mother. I did not feel the earthquake.
Yeah.
So she was like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot.
It's actually funny. My wife is from Virginia, so obviously getting her to move out here.
Oh, right.
We had to have all the talks about earthquakes, and
sure.
My dad texted me, "Hey, did you feel the earthquake?" No.
Right.
And I asked her, "Hey, did you feel an earthquake?" And she was working at Torrance Memorial.
Oh, good.
That day.
Yeah.
No.
Huh. Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
It's like, well, congrats, honey. You just had your first earthquake.
Right.
It's like, no.
Right. Yeah. It's like that on the Queen Mary too. We wouldn't feel anything, and the lions would bounce around. Oh, that reminds me of a story. Here we go. No, when we were up at the Port of Richmond, normally the ship, due to the tide along that channel or something, it would push us against the pier pilings, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did have a pretty severe earthquake up there, and it was really interesting because it was about 5 o'clock in the morning. I want to say it was like 7 maybe or so. It was a pretty good one.
Wow.
But in the middle of the night, we heard this gigantic, wham, and the ship kind of shook. And it was like, if you were in wartime, it'd be almost like, I suppose, getting torpedoed.
Uh-oh.
And we all fell out on the deck and everything else. And the first thing I thought of was an earthquake. And the rest of the folks thought we'd been rammed by one of the passing cargo ships or something like that. And I turned on the radio, and that's what it was. The earthquake just traveled, since we were right next to the pilings, it traveled like right through the ship. And it was really bizarre. We still talk about that. That was really crazy.
Did the pilings hit the ship, or was that...
I don't know exactly. I just think we were so close that whatever vibrations just seemed to go right through the ship as well.
Wow.
And maybe they did. I don't know, now that you said that. But yeah, it really blew our minds. We were pretty shook up there. We were kind of looking at each other going, woo, that was...
Like, surprise!
Oh, yeah. It was an incredible way to wake up that day.
Well, I bet no one was having any problems with being tired after that, I bet.
No, that definitely woke us up, for sure. But yes, indeed. All right.
So let's get started again. And hopefully this game in The Big Sister will go better than the last one.
Okay. Steaming along, that's for sure. Good stuff. All right.
Yeah. It's actually rather funny. Len was our very first interview, of course, New Jersey vet.
Sure.
Very salty that New Jersey is not featured in the game. So.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. So New Jersey is the most decorated battleship. She had 14 battle stars. Unfortunately, except for being in Vietnam, Iowa would have had 13 and she wound up with 11. But when she had the propeller shaft problem after going through Halsey's typhoon, and they couldn't fix it in the South Pacific's floating dry dock, and she had to come all the way up to Hunters Point in San Francisco.
Right.
She missed out on 2 additional campaigns that they awarded battle stars to. Otherwise, she would have wound up with 13, awful close to New Jersey.
A lucky number that would have been.
Right. That's true too. Yeah. A lot of people.
It bent the shaft 30 degrees, didn't it? Or how?
I think it was more of the lining that supported the propeller.
Okay.
Yeah. I hadn't heard anything of that nature. Yeah. But since Iowa was the last battleship in the world to be saved. It was really kind of amazing. A lot of people didn't think she was going to make it.
Yeah.
She'd languished so long to have her saved. And another talking point I always like to remind people about was this area of San Pedro behind the breakwater. It was called Battleship Country.
Right.
And from 1910 until 1940, until President Roosevelt sent the Pacific Fleet out to Pearl Harbor, we had anywhere from 12, 13, 14 battleships, anchored here.
This was the home of the Pacific Fleet.
Yeah. And so a lot of people too don't know that the families that were left behind were a lot of the widowed or orphaned or whatever families of the sailors that were killed at the Pearl Harbor attack, because they didn't move out because it was supposed to be a temporary situation. This was still the home port of the Pacific Fleet.
Right.
And those ships were still, this was their home port. Well, then everything started, of course, after that, being forward deployed to Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
But then the Long Beach Naval Base was built, and the shipyard, and all those things as well. Or maybe they started before. I'd have to check that.
Nice.
Not quite sure, but yeah, that's another talking point I like to point out. So,
Yeah.
I have this other joke about occasionally they'll send me out for like VIP tours, and when I greet the people, I always ask them, "Hey, how long did you want to take touring Iowa? You know,
Right.
What are you looking at? An hour?" And they kind of look at me like, and then I follow up and I tell them, "Well, you know, there's a lot to see here, and I can take you up to a 6-hour tour." And they're like, "Oh, okay, no, we just, we just want to do."
Now they understand,
Right,
yes,
right.
why you ask how much time you got. Yeah.
And so I'll get about an hour into it, and I'll just go, "Well, how's your time looking? We could go do X, Y, and Z, or if you're ready to go, stuff like." And sometimes they're super excited and they're having so much fun. They'll go, "Oh, let's stay a little longer. This is cool." Or sometimes they do have commitments and they have to go, back to work or whatever it might be.
We don't begrudge them for that too much.
Right. Exactly.
Just the exactly right amount of begrudging.
Yeah. So
okay.
I kind of gone through the different tour routes enough that pretty much know how long things take.
Yeah.
Which works out well.
Good.
So you're kind of flexible in that aspect. Put something together in your mind and take off and running.
Amen.
So
yeah.
To the Armored Stairmaster and off you go. Right.
I love that. I love that nickname because it's just so true.
Yeah. Well, then one of the captains pointed out to us that from the 80s that the average age of the people that were running the ship were 17, 18, 19-year-olds. And we always, thought, well, yeah, no kidding, no wonder.
Yeah, they kind of have to be.
Yeah, because it's demanding. I can, at the end of the week, I'm glad to sit and watch a little TV, read a shipbook, build a ship model. Oh.
Take a load off.
Right.
Nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's great that they painted the decks too, and a lot of people didn't know that the cruisers and battleships and early aircraft carriers had those teak wood decks, partially because they didn't have air conditioning, so they tried to keep at least the metal from picking up the sun's heat,
right?
And heating up the ship. But there was a World War II vet that came on board the ship, and I'm pretty sure he was thinking of the dark blue color that was painted, so it reminded him of a metal deck.
Right.
But he made the comment to us, is like, "Well, we never had a wooden deck." Well, they did, but he just didn't remember that they had painted them. And otherwise, you give off that light teakwood deck as a target for many, many miles, and hopefully you blend in with the sea. Although I think a battleship kind of sticks out there no matter what.
They kind of demand attention.
Right.
You know. Yeah. This is not it's not a sneaky ship unless we're Washington.
Right. There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. Boy, you're staying busy.
Yep. So I mean, people tell me that I should.
Oh, we got more. Are they telling you to?
I don't have to press all the time. There's something I could do that turns this on all the time, so that I don't have to keep pressing the button to turn it on and off. I don't know. It's just something that I.
See, I never got beyond Pong. So all this is like
You don't care. It's like, hey, cool.
Right. I still enjoy Pong actually. It's one thing I know how to handle.
But yeah, after I'm done streaming, I'll go into the settings and change that because
there we go.
Apparently, I'm driving this guy crazy with pressing this all the time. So.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah.
Right. Now I picked up a controller one time. And I was trying to play something with my boys, and they left me in the dust so fast. I was like, hey, I give up. I don't even know where to go with this. So,
my mom is very fond of Tom Lehrer,
oh,
the
sure.
singer comedian.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's so simple, so very simple that only a child can do it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. No, I feel like I date myself anymore, but I remember when we were in aerospace and we still had our 10 key calculators,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden one day they dropped a personal computer on our desk. Well, some of the employees that were close to retiring, like from the Apollo rocket era,
Mm-hmm.
they simply didn't turn it on, and they just moved it over to the side of their desk. Well, finally, management had to tell them, it's like, you're no longer going to get these memos in paper form. You're going to have to log into an email account.
Right.
And they were like, well, what do you mean? You know, it's like, and so now look where we are. You know, I do so much on the computer, like purchasing things and researching things and everything else.
Oh yeah.
And I just thought of that beginning point where they weren't even willing to, go that direction. And then there was a lot of word processing people that were laid off when that happened. Because from that point forward, we had to write our own emails, our own letters, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that wiped out a whole, category of employees.
Right.
So, anyhow, like I said, I feel like I'm dating myself.
Well, not too much. It's okay.
Right.
And we won't look too badly. Well,
Uh-oh.
yeah.
Is that the conclusion then of...
Well, I'm not dead yet. I will be soon. But
more comments on...
yeah, until I go down, I can take my share of blood. So,
Okay.
there is a question: did Iowa ever overload its engines? Apparently, they heard something where New Jersey did.
Boy, that's a good question. I don't know if that ever took place. Yeah, I've never heard that comment before. I haven't read it before. Now, our veteran on board the ship that's in charge of our security and IT, Dave Canfield, he was on board the ship in the 80s. He said at one point in time, when they had just come out of the shipyard after the refurbishment for the Cold War, that they opened her up and she got up to, he was saying like 35, 36 knots.
Yeah.
Because I think she was a little lighter then. And I guess the chief engineer basically said there was more steam they could have opened up to the engines, but he made the comment that, hey, the old lady's waltzing as fast as I want to push her, basically.
Right.
And so he said he felt like he didn't want to go any further.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know of any operation where they had any damages, things of that nature. I did read at one point in time, or overheard perhaps, that the captains really loved these engine rooms because you had a lot of opportunity to conserve fuel by not lighting on as many boilers. And because when you started getting over like 22 knots or so, you had to light more boilers, and then you really do start sucking the fuel. But at, I think it was either 12 or 15 knots, they said they could economically cruise about 15,000 nautical miles.
Wow.
Because she holds so much, of course, fuel, like 2,400,000 gallons.
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal. And that was the other joke. They called her the armored oiler, but she could refuel the escorting frigates, destroyers, cruisers.
Yeah.
And keep them close to them for protection. But then also, you wouldn't endanger your refueling replenishment group. They could stay outside the combat zone, perhaps.
There's a comment.
Oh, here we go.
Yep, there's a comment. According to the power and speed curves, Iowa would do 27, 28 knots with about half the boilers.
Okay.
Which sounds about right.
Yeah, that does, because there's 8 boilers, and so if you only had about 4... Yeah, one of the folks that comes out periodically, our chief electrician from the 80s, he comes out and volunteers, and we've learned so much from the ship. He's supposed to be writing up a bunch of quirky little things such as that.
Right.
And although I'm sure that technical people can figure out those kind of calculations and things like that, he's going to document a lot of things that have to do, like the main throttle board, control board is in Engine Room 3. But he made all these comments about how you could operate this or use this power plant for this purpose, and I don't know, different things of that nature. And I was like, why don't you write these things down? Because I don't think they're documented, at least down to a level for the average person to pick up on and turn into good talking points, perhaps. So yeah, that's interesting. Was there more that popped out?
It says the power to speed requirements become cubic above 30 knots.
Okay.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Right.
The way I heard it was exponential, but I can believe it's cubic.
Sure. Oh, that's interesting.
It looks like we have our hard-working ops crew passing by.
Yeah, at least the LED guys.
At least the LED guys.
Yeah, so what's taking place in the background is we received a grant from the Water and Power people of Los Angeles to relamp, so to speak, Iowa with LED instead of fluorescent tubes. And it's about at least a 3-month process because there's over, I think it's 10,120 some tubes are going to be, replaced here. And so they're slowly going through the ship deck by deck. And there's all kinds of quirky different locations that these folks had to go check out. And while that's taking place too, we've discovered a few wiring and circuits and whatever. I'm not an electrical guy that that were burnt out and had to be worked on that we weren't aware of. So that kind of opened up some things that for us to go take a look at.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyhow.
Yeah, you were talking about the difference of flashlight versus light. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and these LEDs are just phenomenal. They're so much brighter. And now we're kind of like going, ooh, boy, that looks a little dirtier than I thought it was. And so we need to clean up a few areas. And unfortunately, we don't have a crew size of 1,500. Only about 40 or 50 paid plus volunteers. So it's kind of hard to maintain the ship to traditional Navy standards, I guess you'd say. So,
hopefully, no one expects us to go that far.
Yeah. So, right. But one thing that's interesting is the ship, how we received it after she was mothballed from the reserve fleet is almost exactly as how we found her or received her.
Nice.
And that was one thing that unfortunately there's a lot of areas on the Queen Mary they didn't keep totally authentic, totally original.
Right.
And I think in hindsight, which is always a wonderful thing, that was a mistake when people look back. And so one of the pleas, so to speak, I made to our staff was keep it as originally as you possibly can. Right. Unless there's a real safety or functional issue. And even then, we've kept all the stairs, original. Mm-hmm. And amazingly enough, we have not had hardly just a handful of injuries. And I think people really appreciate the authenticity of it being a warship. Right. And are really cautious walking around and kind of makes it an additional adventure when they're going around the ship and going, geez, wow, how did they do this? How did they, so it's a total immersing experience, besides the history and the graphics and things like that.
When you say it was an additional adventure, I was remembering the time that you took a spill and wound up being out for a good couple of weeks.
I still I'm embarrassed to say, I finally, after working here, as I mentioned earlier, 6.5 years, I did take a nasty tumble, and it was down a ladder that at the bottom of it, it's got a coaming, a metal lip there, and I whacked that. Nice. And most of them don't have that, and any other stair ladder area, it probably wouldn't have been as bruised as badly as I was. And I still have a dent in the top of my right knee area. Nice. And it might be permanent, and I call it the mark of Iowa. Why not?
Means she likes you or something, right?
It wasn't a gentle kiss, I'll tell you. Yeah, they called it a severe contusion. I love that term. Nice. So yeah. After X years, I finally wiped out.
Yeah.
So
And I don't know if you've heard, but Craig and I have a helmet that we're going to gift to Gary.
Oh, okay. Right.
For his
tumble?
For his feet of tumble, yes.
Okay. Well, we do joke, at the end of the week, you'll be looking at your arm or something like that, and you're all black and blue, and you have no idea how it happened. But just walking around the ship, even when you're careful, there's things that jut out, or you bash into something, and you took a quarter too quick, or whatever it might be. And I'm always joking about, cuts and bruises, and I have no idea where it came from, except the ship, of course.
Right.
So, a lot of inside jokes along those lines. And then when we were first on the ship too, it hadn't been opened up, and the diesel smell or the ship smell was really strong.
Oof.
And it just permeated your clothes and your luggage and everything else. And so when I'd come home, everybody'd go, and I go, well, it's the ship's smell. I can't help it.
Yeah.
But now we've really opened up the ship, so it's not quite as bad as it was. But it used to have a very strong ship smell, whatever, for lack of better term.
A better term
yes,
for it, yeah.
Or impolite term, perhaps.
Nice.
So, but yeah, it's a combination of like diesel fuel and food,
and sweat,
and guys, and then all the different lubricants and all kinds of crazy things. But you go on any ship and it pretty much smells the same. Like there's that traditional ship smell, and so
yeah. There's a person that says
yes.
They visited the Iowa with friends in December, and people bump their heads all the time.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Well,
me and she likes you.
Right. No, I know the doctors reported the medical folks on board Iowa, what kept them busy the most was just stitches on either the heads or the forearms or wherever it might be. They were always stitching up guys.
Yeah.
And then one of my friends was in the Navy, and he was, probably, I don't know, 6'2" or something like that. And
Oof.
he said he led his whole life in the service. I stooped over. And then one day he was walking along when he was out of the service and realized, oh yeah, I can stand up. I can stand up like a normal person again. So
that awkward moment where you just hope that no one really noticed.
Sure. But interestingly, also the ship was designed in 1938, and I've noticed from the World War II uniforms that were donated to us, we were a bit smaller in those days, and like the guys, most of the average jacket sizes for the uniforms are like 40 and 42.
Mm-hmm.
And I think today our average coat jacket sizes are probably more like 44 and 46.
Yeah.
And slim waists and things like that. And I know I don't fit into anything in that category.
I used to. I was small enough for it.
Right. Well, at one point in time. Yeah.
And then I got married, and my wife is a wonderful cook.
Oh, I remember that phase. Yeah, I went through that as well. Yeah.
And that was the end. Yeah.
Right.
Love you, honey.
Right, but the ship was built probably to different parameters and body ergonomics and all that good things. Or, another comment I make about the warships too is they're built around function,
right,
and not around creature comforts, and especially from that era. And I think, probably from the 60s on, there was a little bit more thought that went into creature comforts, as much as you can incorporate, into a warship, perhaps.
Yeah.
Someone
saying they found a book of annual naval reports from the 1920s, and said the most injuries were from falling in various ways and places. So
yes, yeah.
Sure enough.
Yeah, and sometimes it becomes serious, and people lose their lives. And, yeah. So it's I'm super careful. That one time I fell, I was holding on to it was a chain kind of handrail,
right?
But I had something in my hand, and so it slipped off the chain, and it was a split second, because I normally am very careful, because I just understand it's a dangerous environment. You got to be careful. So, but that's all it took, was that split second.
Just that one moment.
Right. Yeah. So anyhow,
Oh, fun times. So, somehow we're still alive.
oh, okay.
Looks like we're actually gonna win this game. So, woohoo!
There you go.
One where I actually survived. This is a good day for me. This is a very good play session for me.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we joke that people are watching us for the history and not for, decent gameplay.
Okay. Well, that's good news for you, right?
We'd be a lot less popular if they came for us otherwise, but yeah.
Sure.
But anyway.
Sure. That's great.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of doubling back to the third deck exhibits and expansions. We have a couple of volunteers that are actually building 1/200 scale that are come out by Trumpeter. Beautiful kits. We've already seen pictures of them, of both let me think for a second, Bismarck and also the hood.
Nice.
Because Ballard, of course, dove on both of those
right.
shipwrecks. And down in our museum, side by side, we have World War II Iowa and her measure 32-1B camouflage.
Of course.
Right next to Yamato, because we have that question that, of course, comes up all the time.
Oh, yeah.
What would happen if,
Iowa versus
if one of the Iowas squared off with a Yamato class guy. So, wow, that would look pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
we have by the way, this is completely a personal question on my part, but
yes.
Will one of the Ballard ships be Yorktown?
Oh boy.
I kind of have a personal.
Right, I'm trying to remember.
He did.
I don't think that one was selected. I would have to double check. But it's still in work. You can throw that out there, and
okay, I definitely will.
I'll have to go double check if that's included or not.
Yeah,
I don't recall.
Yorktown is actually what got me into World War II history.
Oh, okay.
So
okay, great.
It holds a place in my heart.
Great. Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got a question here. How does the electrical power of the Iowas compare to some of the contemporary ships?
Oh boy. I am absolutely the wrong person to ask or answer that question. I don't know. I really don't. We do have a wonderful electrician on board. George is his name. I would have to ask him. That's one of my weak areas, is the electrical. I know we have a 440 system. Yeah, I couldn't tell you. Sorry.
Well,
yeah.
As we were saying, there's always more to learn.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now that would be a fun person to bring up here. If you could get permission to have him speak for a while. George works on, and he used to help build in shipyards, like in Todd Shipyard.
Nice.
He used to help build frigates and things of that nature, and he's really familiar with ship systems, and he's learned a lot along with our 80s electrical chief that visits us periodically about the ship.
Marty, yeah.
Right, Marty, yeah. And he has picked up on a lot of little quirky, interesting tidbits that I'm not capable of explaining.
Yeah.
I'm kind of more of a history, although there's definitely a technical history of the ship, and he would understand that aspect much greater than I would.
Well, we'll have to. We were blessed to have Marty be able to come up and talk to us. But
super. Yeah, he's so much fun to listen to. So interesting. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, definitely George and really a lot of the people from Ops. We definitely want them.
Right.
I'm sure the problem is they're so busy.
I know, it's
they're
hard.
Always busy.
Yeah, it's hard. Might have to get George at an off day or just set it up somehow. Yeah. Sneak him in or something.
Make a plan.
Right. Exactly.
Anything but that.
Right. Well, yes. Plan. Yes. Right.
Yes. What is this plan of which you speak?
Yes.
But yeah.
All right.
So we won and we didn't die. Woohoo!
Always a good thing.
Always a good thing.
Right.
I'll take the victory and I'll take the life.
Okay.
I joke a lot about my skill or lack thereof, but really, No, I can't really. No, I'm not all that good. But I do my best.
Right. Well, I enjoyed watching as I was rambling on, speaking.
If nothing else, certainly entertaining to watch me flail.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. Alrighty.
So, anything else you can think of that the watching world just absolutely has to hear about?
Jeez. I was thrilled we got the ship's bell on board.
Oh, yeah.
And that took about 4 months of effort, mainly...
Well, tell us some about that.
Okay.
So we have our bell.
Yeah, the original ship's bell says Iowa on it, and it's marked 1943.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got pictures of that on the forward superstructure underneath the '08 battle bridge. Mm-hmm. And then there was one back aft just above turret 3. And I believe that was probably just marked with US or USN. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite sure. But anyhow, we actually found some paperwork in our archives from the 80s. And it's now the property of the Navy, and it was on loan to the State Capitol building in Des Moines, Iowa. And we put out an effort and got their blessing for it to come back on Iowa, the state capitol and history people there. Weighs 800 pounds. It's made out of cast iron. 34 inches tall, and then the base is also at the widest point at the bell. Is 34 inches wide.
Right.
And so anyhow, the 80s crew, the third commissioning crew, they had it chromed and was placed...
Because of course they did.
It looked really nice.
It's the 80s.
Right.
Everything is chrome.
And it's on the forward antenna structure.
Right.
But it only remained there for a limited period of time. I'm not quite sure how long it was there. Mm-hmm. And then it was moved into the officer's wardroom and placed on a pedestal.
Okay.
And that's where we're going to return her. Right now she's in our second deck museum.
Right.
And then they replaced that forward bell from an inventory withdrawal, and I've got the paperwork, which is super interesting.
Of course.
And it just says US on it, and it's pretty similar bell. It even sounds the same. I don't know its weight. I think it's close. But anyhow, it was off the Astoria. Second or third, whatever it was, Astoria, not the World War II one. I think it's CL90 was the right designation. I'll have to double check. But anyhow, that's what's actually up forward.
Very good.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Where the aft bell went to after the Korean War, I have no idea. Probably it's just back in inventory. And whoever has that paper trail, maybe it's in the History and Heritage Commands.
Maybe it's in the National Archives.
Right, right.
Reason to go back.
Right. But first, the History and Heritage Command, the History Department of the Navy, they initially had, when I started this effort, they had changed their paperwork and some of their policies regarding loans out to the ships or museums. Mm-hmm. And the way this works is when a ship's decommissioned, the public affairs officer and or the History Heritage Command people, there's certain items that they pull off the ship.
Right.
And those really become the property of the government and the history department. And even though they came off your particular ship you might be a museum with, they're not ever going to be your property again.
Right.
So those items, when you request them to go out on display, are loaned to you as a ship. So we have a 3-year loan, and every year we have to give like a little status of that, how that item's doing, and then you can ask for an extension to that loan. But before, we had to be like certified,
right,
as a museum and as a nonprofit group, and there was a whole series of paperwork to submit before we could even request for that loan to take place, and then they actually have to approve your shipping method. You've got to work with the shipper to explain to the Navy how you're going to appropriately package and ship that item.
Because they don't want the bell to just disappear.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, that took place, and, it's all this back and forth, so it's pretty time-consuming, and so anyhow, we did accomplish that. There might be some other things we will follow through and request to come back on Iowa. However, we do have to pay for the transportation. So we're one of those starving nonprofit type groups, so to speak. So we have to pick and choose where our priorities are, with our funds and things like that. And another criteria the Navy has added is whatever you ask for back has to go on display in front of the public. Because what they don't want to have take place, and has in the past with some people, is you ask for things back just because it came from your ship.
Right.
But then it goes into some...
It just sits.
Yeah, it just sits and nobody sees it, and it's forgotten about, or it's not maintained, and they don't want to have that take place again, which I think is totally understandable.
Fair enough,
But probably the number one thing we would like to have back is the ship's wheel. That would go up in the 04 Army Conning Tower bridge.
Up in the bridge.
What's up there now is just a substitute, a replacement.
Okay.
But Marty pointed out, our 1980s electrician, that I think the crew raised funds for a ship's wheel because I think the one from World War II, Korean War era, I'm not quite sure what happened to it, but they, I think, purchased one, and I think he said it was rosewood, and very nice. And there's a traditional look you have for a large ship's wheel.
Do they chrome that one too?
No. Not that I know of. No. That looks pretty sharp. So
very
maybe
nice.
we'll get that back on the board one day, and that'll be seen by the public on a daily basis. So there's no issue. There whatsoever.
And speaking of the bell, one fun thing that
there it is.
We noticed a while ago. There it is.
And so the pictures, believe it or not, it has a real long lanyard that comes down. So somebody, I suppose, up on the 05 level or 06 level or up there, would ring it for ceremonial, I suppose, purposes, or maybe navigational purposes. I'm not sure how that. I don't think.
Was there another one that would hang from 04?
No, not there. Okay. No, and then the one back aft was right underneath the Mark 37. Oh, there it is. They've got it. Sure enough, yeah. Now in the 80s, on the further aft where they don't have the aviation shack there. I guess it was added later on. There's a gong, and when they changed the safety at sea regulations, you had to have a different sounding bell. So the bell was up forward, like in fog conditions or something. Right. Because you want to show a ship that's in inclement weather or fog or whatever, the distance, how large of a ship you're talking about, so they would do it by sound. So that's why that gong is still sitting back there on the aft shack.
Nice.
Aviation hut, whatever you want to call it.
The aviation hut is now what's here, right?
Oh, no, it's back
it's further.
Right, just... Right there. Right about
here?
Yeah. Remember? Okay. And I think they showed the movies out of there at one point in time.
Yes, I do remember now. That's where they project for movies under the gun. Yeah.
Right. And that's where we're going to put, I believe, the elevator that goes from the main deck to the second deck. And there's another elevator that's going from the second deck to the third deck for the expansion.
For the expansion, yeah.
And that's from a grant from also the state of Iowa, a recent grant. And then they also provided money to maintain or improve our electrolysis field, to prevent corrosion from taking place around the hull. And we're trying to treat Iowa for a long-term, not investment, but preservation.
Makes sense.
And not run into problems such as the poor Texas and the Olympia are experiencing. So that's maintained with a lot of, consistent attention is, I guess, the way to put it. Because we do want to make sure that we try to stay out of dry docks as long as we possibly can.
Amen.
I
actually remember very strongly something that overhearing something that Getcher said to me, which was basically that that there are only 2 commercial dry docks big enough to fit us on the Pacific coast.
Yeah.
One in Pearl and one in Japan. And that it would actually be less expensive to tow us to Japan, have us fixed in Japan, and then tow us back here.
Sure.
Than it would be to work on us in Pearl.
Yeah. I think there's one in Bremerton, but that's a government one. It would probably be impossible. And then there was one in the BAE has in San Francisco, but apparently Iowa's stern with their engines back in this area is too heavy, I believe. Mike would know much better than I do, but that's how I remembered it, and hopefully that's correct.
Well, someday if we
I just stated.
Well, someday we'd love to have Mike Getcher on here as well.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. He's another wealth of information.
I believe
of things that I don't get involved with, and yeah.
Person I'm slightly terrified of, which probably for the better, but so
right.
The game also includes our theoretical upgrade.
Oh, there we go. I was
Montanus.
just reading some information about her, and
so let's take her out, have some fun with her.
Right.
And while we do so, we do have another question. What is the most common misconception you hear about the Iowa class?
Okay. I like that question a lot. There's I call them battleship myths. Is what I like to call them.
Battle myths?
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Well, a couple of the things that I've had to correct our staff and our tour volunteers about. First of all, one of the things, it took me a while to kind of learn this or figure this out, but a lot of people think that the Iowas were built to just escort aircraft carriers, and I don't find that true at all.
No.
Because when she was designed in 1938, the aircraft threat really hadn't been surfaced or really fully,
recognized.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Iowas are super unique. I learned as I did different research. They pretty much put the best of everything into them, and I think it was partially because there was this unknown threat of what Japan was doing with their warships.
Right.
They weren't even aware that Yamato and Musashi actually had those huge 18-inch guns, but some of the battleships that had been converted from battle cruisers, they had been improved more than once, secretly, and their speed increased greatly. And so what they did with the Iowas was they put the best of everything. Traditionally, American battleships were great armor and great firepower, but they held back compared to their contemporaries on speed. So the Iowas pretty much had a midway class type aircraft carrier power plant.
Right.
And also you can tell on the price tag too, and this is really interesting. The North Carolina and Washington and then the South Dakota class, they were right around $70 million at the time, which is hysterically cheap compared to today's prices.
Yes.
And then the Iowas, I've seen them called out at $110 million. Malcolm Muir's book is $125 million he called out.
Yeah.
And that might be, and I still haven't been able, here I go, I'm getting sidetracked, but I haven't been able to determine if the turrets were purchased separately. So anyhow, the point was they were so much more expensive than the previous battleship class. In fact, Congress asked the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral
King,
yes, thank you. I had to stop and think. Do you really want to take up the shipyard space for these battleships and the price? Shouldn't we be building carriers? And he came back and said, no, I still think there's some worth in the battleships. So the Iowas were super special, I believe, and they were tracked down to basically be able to hunt down, attack with great speed, great fire control systems, and the new armor-piercing shell, the 2,700 pounder, to really tackle somebody. Now, as a side benefit, they had so much space on them that they could mass all that firepower, anti-aircraft firepower.
Right.
And with the great speed, they could escort the aircraft carriers. So they were part of the fast attack,
Right.
And this is one of the reasons, too, that the Navy never wanted to get rid of those for a long, long time, and they kept coming out for the Korean War, then for the Vietnam War, and then for the Cold War as well. They still were relevant with their great speed, their incredible armor, and the large guns.
Nice.
So that's one point. The other one that people got a little frustrated, this is just central to Iowa, was the bathtub.
Yes.
And the captain's import cabin. Don't everybody shoot me now, but it was not the only bathtub ever placed on the warship. Now you could say it was installed for the president. It's the only bathtub installed for the president, but we do know of several other warships. The Olympia right now has got a bathtub. The New Jersey had one during the Vietnam War. The captain brought one on board. I've got pictures of the Mississippis. I've got deck plans that show one on the Texas, I believe, at one point in time. And if I ever get back to the National Archives, I think I could find other bathtub pictures, but they would be in the Admiral's, I think, areas as well.
Okay.
So that was one myth. Unfortunately, I upset a few people about there. And let's see what's... Oh, there's always this debate about when the ship flips upside down that the turrets fall out.
Right.
And Mike Escher actually has... he did a 2-hour talk about that. And there's actually clips to hold the turrets in place, at least for, shooting.
Right.
And they analyzed through a naval architect, and he said, they would, if the ship did flip upside down, they would be held in. However, what we've seen with different warships is if they're damaged, if there's internal pressures, they'll probably get blown out, things of that nature.
Yeah.
And there's, I can't remember the ship from the Battle of Jutland that was scuttled and flipped over. And when they scrapped her, when they towed her in upside down, and her turrets were still in.
Huh.
Now, we always think of that famous painting of the Bismarck.
Right.
So I don't think... Some of them might have been just seated with gravity, but I think there were some retaining clips to some point, whether or not they were all strong enough to hold in a turret. So that's another urban myth, and I'm trying to think of the fourth urban myth and that I'm always explaining. Oh, the ship does not move sideways when the ship shoots the 16-inch guns.
Yes.
So the gun barrels do recoil 47 inches, about 4 feet. Also, it does give a great rock. And what you see in a lot of the photographs is the optical illusion. There's a blast pressure that pushes a big wave out. And the crew have told us, though, like you'd have some paint chips and cork and maybe a tube, a light tube, or something would explode because of the pressures, depending on the angle of the shoot. And the bakers, I learned, would try to time their baking of the bread so it wouldn't get flattened at different points in time. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Nice.
But I had veterans get all upset and say, no, the ship would move sideways,
Right.
And there's actually a mathematical calculation that I know Captain Snyder during the Vietnam War performed, and then one of our naval engineers that used to be at the Naval Shipyard, Dick Landgraf. I've got a whole article he wrote about why that doesn't take place. So it's pretty interesting. That's another what I call urban myth.
Nice.
That I have to correct, and then people get mad because they've repeated this story over and over and over again.
Well, it is a pretty awesome story, to be fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Exactly. So anyhow, I hope that answered somewhat of the question.
Well, certainly provide quite a few.
Right.
This person says that they've heard that the U.S. were the only ones that had turret clips through World War II, which was why Oklahoma's turrets stayed in place when she sank.
Okay, that could be true. Yeah, interesting. I'm trying to think. We did have some turret cutaway drawings. I'd have to go back and double check of some Royal Navy ships. I thought there was something along the line of clips that was holding down, but I might be wrong. So that's interesting. I'll have to revisit that topic. I haven't really looked at that lately.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Great.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense that. That wasn't a good ending.
Nope.
So.
Yeah.
Well,
So bye paper ship.
How are we doing for time now? Are we?
So we're at 3:40 actually. So we can call it whenever you wish. If you
okay.
Keep
Okay,
talking. We're
no,
always happy to keep talking.
Right. Well, I probably should get back to my
We should let you do your actual
compartment.
job. Okay.
No, this is part of my job. I always feel it's important to come out and share things with people and kind of be out there for people that have questions. And yeah, that's definitely part of our job. And
Oh yeah.
I have a lot of people that email me and ask historical questions, and if I can, do the technical questions, I handle those or get it to the right people that do, because I never try to answer a question if I don't know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's the wrong thing to do.
Right.
So anyhow, hope everybody enjoyed some of the comments. And
and thank you.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Again,
always
so
a
much
pleasure
for joining us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're happy to have you. And if you want to come back,
okay. Yeah.
we're always happy to have you.
Give me a certain topic if you want me to talk up or speak about, and then I'll be sure to research it well. So.
To bone up ahead of time?
Yeah, exactly. It's always much more comfortable to, go that direction. And I wasn't blessed with a photographic memory.
Of course. And then I want to thank you all for joining us. Hope you all had a great time, and hope you all learned a lot from Mr. Way. And
we try harder here.
We do indeed try our best.
Yes.
If you'd like to see more... you can view our past interviews at our YouTube channel called Anchor Management, ANCHOR Management. I just posted the link in chat. Or on our Facebook page, facebook.com/NEPMTwitch. That's facebook.com/NEPMTwitch, also called Anchor Management. Hope you all enjoyed our time today, and hope you enjoyed our time.
Oh, always. Yeah, to talk about the ship. I'll do one
last thing.
One flag. So every second Saturday, we have what's called the Curator's Tour inside Iowa, and it's a 4-hour tour. We go to the locations that aren't on the normal tour, mainly the second deck, but then I throw in a history slideshow, some films. We do have lunch. And we're only allowed to do this once a month per the fire department, and it's only for 20 people. That's all they'll let us take below decks. And you can read more about it on our ship's website. It's not cheap. It's $99. So it's every second Saturday. The last I looked, there was 10 sold for the next one, which is a week from tomorrow. But I have a lot of fun, and I'm always updating and tweaking it and trying to add different things, new information, new current history too, like the Lexington dive that's taken place. I have some photos I downloaded and I show people just hey, guess what's in the news type routine, and it breaks it up for myself as well as the volunteers that are my tail end Charlies, as I call them, to help us around. But that's always a big day. I put a lot of effort into to that.
Of course.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's all.
All right, folks. That's all for now. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thanks for your support.
And have a great rest of the day. We'll see you all next time. Hopefully with another guest as wonderful as you.
Okay.
That can distract everyone from my horrible gameplay. All right. Take care, everybody.